Blender can feel overwhelming when you first open it. UI, the hotkeys, the endless ways to do the same thing. In those first few days, it can feel like you're barely moving. What if you can take 20 years of professional 3D modeling secrets and condense them into the next 20 minutes? I've started 3D modeling in 2004 in Maya, and since then, I touched nearly every major package. ZBrush, Modo, Softimage, Houdini, Moai 3D, Plasticity. So when I finally learned Blender, I wasn't starting from scratch. I was translating 2 decades of hard-earned knowledge into a brand new tool set. What's going on, 3D modeling beasts? This is JL Musi. I'm a professional 3D artist with experience both in film and video games. I've created educational content for companies like Autodesk, and my 3D software reviews have been featured in PC Mag. I've even presented my 3D workflows as SIGGRAPH. In this video, I'm going to share not just Blender shortcuts and tools, but actionable workflows pros use to build clean, production-ready models. This is the exact video I wish I had when I first started learning the package. By the end, you'll never look at Blender the same way. I've ranked these tips from quick wins to game-changing techniques, so stick around to the very end. Step and subdivide. This is a great way to quickly route geometry in different angles while leaving a clean quadded path. So what we can do is start selecting our range here. Now by default, on the pick shortest path, we could change the setting to face stepping. And this is going to switch things to essentially rings, but these are going to be perpendicular to our cut. Hold down Shift to add basically the change in direction, and then hold down Control. And as long as we got face step enabled, you see that if we actually uncheck it, it's going to pick more of that linear path. But if we go to face stepping, now we're selecting the rings. So I'm going to hold down Shift. This is going to be the change in direction. Hold down Control, hold down Shift, hold down Control, and then we'll add this last one. Now that we have these rings selected, I can right click, go to subdivide. If by default you're not getting the invert option, select invert. Basically this invert got connected and it all quadded out. Hit double G, just feather these verts slightly. Now we can select these edges, bevel them, extrude along the normal, go to object mode, add a sub D modifier, right click, shade smooth. And if we look at a wireframe here, we have great edge flow, which is going to give us clean results. Verts to faces is a very time-saving selection technique that allows you to select one component, like a vert, and convert that over to faces. So instead of trying to manually select these faces here, we could select one vert, hit Control 3, and that's going to basically convert that one vert to faces. And now you see that we've picked up this entire cylindrical cap with essentially 2 clicks. The shear tool is an underused but powerful tool for creating angles in your 3D models in Blender instead of using the rotate tool. So I'm going to select one of these faces here. I'll do Shift G, go to coplanar to select all the faces within this plane. I'm actually going to use the tool here, shear. We're going to get this gizmo. We can select the axes that we want to essentially skew. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this axis here. So if we go to the top view here, you see that it's not affecting our shape. We just added this angle extremely quickly to a complex model using the shear tool. Just for hanging out with me today, I got a free gift for you. My hard surface cheat sheets are packed with my decades of experience with pro workflows and topology secrets to level up your 3D modeling. Grab it now using the pinned comment below. Advanced mirroring lets us use some of the lesser known options within the mirror modifier to create more complex mirror effects at an angle. So if I wanted to mirror this object at an angle to build some kind of intersection, so let's just drop the mirror modifier. None of these settings here by default allow me to mirror at an angle, but we do have this mirror object. This allows us to take a reference object and assign it an angle for it to use as essentially an axis. So I'll do Shift A, empty, plain axes. If we do Shift Z, you see that we have an empty right there. And I actually want to rotate this in the X 45. And now this is rotating. This empty is going to be my symmetry axes as well as a cutter. We'll go back to our object in the mirror modifier. We're going to select mirror object and we'll select the empty here. So we need to select an axis. I'm going to select the Y, and now you see that we're mirroring here. Now, you see that we still have this wonky intersection here. So what I'll go ahead and do is actually turn on and bisect. And this is actually going to clip out kind of the intersection. And here we could adjust with the visibility settings to kind of preview the result. I'm actually going to leave it as is, and then when we jump into object mode, you see that we're getting kind of that final preview. This is all live, being controlled by a modifier, so we could basically model this, and it's going to interactively mirror and cut this at the same time. And once we're done with the modeling, we could apply the modifier, and now this is all one clean shape. And then we could continue to model this if needed, or add more details once the modifier has been applied. And that is advanced mirroring. Boundary loops are a great way of converting a loop of faces very quickly to edges that would be otherwise time consuming to select on their own. On this brake lever here, you see that we have a pretty soft transition. What I like to do is add a shape defining bevel and then selecting the boundary loop to bevel those edges to basically give them a hard crease. I'll select this loop. I'll do Control B. I'll add a shape defining bevel. You see that I'm basically adding almost like a 45-degree angle. We already have the faces selected. If we want to select the top and bottom loop, that would require 2 extra selections. We'd have to go in here, select this one, and then apply our bevel. The faster method would be to go to select loops, and then select boundary loop. So we'll do select boundary loop, and you see that it converted that loop of faces into the boundary loops. And now from this point, we can go ahead and add our bevels. And now we have that nice angled edge reinforced. We take the wireframe off, and we can see how quick it was to get that result. Create orientation lets you make a custom transform orientation from any selection, so you can transform with perfect alignment. If we take a look at this arm right here, and we wanted to essentially elongate these components along these cylinders here, we'd have a little bit of an issue. If I hit N, we see that we don't have any rotational values. This means the global and the local is going to be kind of pointed the same direction. So in this case, we need to make a orientation based on one of these edges that we want to use. This is where we expand the transform options and we hit the plus. We have the ability to create a custom orientation. So I'm going to dive into edit mode, select the edge that I want to align my transform to, go down here, hit the plus, and now you'll see this edge option. I'm going to / isolate my piece, select the components that I want to move. And if I select the move tool, now we get our gizmo, but we have the custom edge orientation. We can push this, and this works at object level. So if I select this piece here, I can push this as well. And that's the create orientation option. Duplicate and deform. This is an extremely powerful workflow that lets you leverage Blender's array modifiers as well as a simple deform to create much complex patterns quickly and efficiently. So we started with this very basic honeycomb pattern. Let's enable the first array, and you see that it builds the first leg of the pattern. The second array builds the second leg like this. This gives us pretty much the entire pattern. Then we applied a weld. It's going to be able to weld all the verts together, and then finally a solidify. So this gives us our initial pattern. Sometimes when you have a lot of modifiers, what I like to do is actually bake everything down by applying the modifiers before bringing in the next leg. So this is the duplicate leg to create the initial pattern, and now we have to deform it. And here's that same exact pattern with all the previous modifiers applied. I did bevel the edges, and I gave it a simple deform, set it to bend, found the right angle. So if we enable that, we get our shape. And then I finally added a weld just to weld the verts on each end of this. And I created 2 simple circles on top to finish the pattern. And that is duplicate and deform. Posed instances let you model in global space while automatically updating changes to a posed duplicate. So I have to rotate this piece into place to get the visual feedback from the blueprints to adjust this loop. However, I want to have the straightforwardness of working in global space. And we could do this by creating an instance to give us visual feedback while we model in global space. To create an instance, I'll do Alt-D and right click, and you see that it looks like it just created a static copy, but this is actually going to follow any changes that I do to this mesh. So I'm going to Control C this offset. Right now we have our original here, loop, and then we have the instance. So I'll take this loop, I'll do G, Y, move this over to the side. I'm simply going to rotate this into place. So now the beauty about this setup is that whatever we do here, it's actually going to get reflected here on this pose piece. I'll do Control Spacebar to maximize my visual real estate. So if you notice this shape here, it's actually quite a bit smaller, and this curve was actually built for a longer bottom piece. So what this means is that we're better off deleting some of these curve points. So I'm going to go in here, select every other point, and you notice that whatever I do on the left is being reflected on the right. I'll do Control Delete, and you see this is quite a bit more simplified. Now I can take these bottom verts here, do G, Z, start moving these up, move these up as well. I'm actually going to take these here, do Control Delete, do G, Z, move these up. Since this geometry is being actively created from these points, you see that it's actually simplifying the geometry as we delete the curve points, which is very, very nice. Let's take these corner points here and scale them in the Y, and then I'll drop them slightly, and then scale them in once more in the Y. We just remodeled this pose piece in world space quickly and efficiently using posed instances. That tip is out of my new course, the Blender Hard Surface Blueprint. Stop bouncing between random YouTube tutorials. This is the proven system that takes anyone, even a complete beginner, from a default cube to a finished portfolio ready model. If you're serious about building production quality work, the link is in the description below. Shrink and fatten. This is a great tool that pushes and pulls along the normals of your mesh that works great on curved surfaces. So let's say that we wanted to give a little bit more volume here to the tip of the boot. If we were to go in here and try to start pushing and pulling these components, you might not get the desired result. I'm going to select the range that I pretty much want the boot to expand. I can do Alt S, and you see that now I'm going to have this different cursor. It's going to allow me to push and pull along the normals of those edges. And you see essentially that I'm getting a little bit more volume in that normal direction. So I'm going to drop that, and now we could look at it and see what the shrink fatten tool is doing under the hood. So once you drop the tool, you could just adjust it once more. It even has a proportional setting option, which is pretty cool. Obviously right now this is overkill. So if we zero this out and we start giving this a little bit more volume, you see that it's starting to basically pull the components along with it. This is an extremely powerful tool to making slight tweaks to your shapes in Blender. Poke and inset. This is a great way of changing the orientation of your edges to create effects like diamond patterns. So I'm going to start with a fresh grid here. I'm going to select all my faces. I'll go to face and poke faces. And now you see that it poked this face, and now we have essentially these 45-degree angles. Now we have to delete the edges that are pretty much straight up and down and not at 45 degrees. Select one edge that's going this direction, one edge that's going this direction. We'll go to select similar direction. Now we've selected all those edges that were going the same direction. I can hit X, dissolve edges, go to face mode, hit A for all, I to inset, push these in, select individual, and now we could affect the thickness. I'll extrude these down, delete the faces. And here's the finished diamond pattern created very quickly using poke and inset. The rip tool in Blender is perfect for quickly separating parts of your mesh while still keeping everything as one object. If I wanted to extend the bicep area here, trying to select all these faces in this pose character would be time consuming. However, with the rip tool, we could actually separate the components based on the edge flow that we have, making this process very, very simple. So I'm simply going to dive in here, select this edge loop where I want to disconnect the components. I'll hit V for the rip tool. Now, if you see, these components are no longer connected. I'll right click to basically rip, but drop it right into place. I'll select one of these faces here, hit L for length, and now we've selected this polygon island, which makes this very, very easy to select and also offset. So I'm going to get the desired length for the arm, and drop it right there. And the beauty about this is that they're still the same object. So I'll simply select both of these edges here, right click, bridge edge loops, and there we go. We've quickly elongated this arm with the help of the rip tool. Advanced component slide lets you slide vertices, edges, or faces smoothly past your model silhouette, giving you precise control over your component's position. A common pain point with the slide tool, if you hit double G, is that it's great for basically constraining objects to certain edge directions in your model, letting you quickly make adjustments. However, this tool has the limitation that when we're starting to block out our shapes, we want to essentially harness the direction of some of these faces, but break the silhouette. And currently you see that we are actually capped out and we have to slide along the silhouette of the model. And this is where the variation to component slide comes into place. At any point when we hit double G, we'll actually notice that it's locking onto a certain axis. You see that it's on the Z axis, and if we hover over a little bit, you see that it switches to this custom slanted direction. So once we're locked into whatever direction we want to break past, we can hold down Alt, and you see that we get these essentially axis constraints that allow us to push past the model silhouette. And if I undo this, hit double G once more, you see now that we're locked in to the Z axis, so we can hold down Alt and we can break again past the model silhouette. And that is the advanced component slide. Select coplanar quickly grabs all the faces that share the same flat surface, making it easy to select different planes throughout your mesh. If we wanted to take all the faces here on this plane, it'd be pretty time consuming selecting it face by face. So we can select any face within this plane. We can go to select and we can do select similar coplanar. It selects all the faces on this plane. So now we could grow our selection once and then basically push this out. And we could repeat this process. This time I'll do Shift G to pull out my select similar menu. And again, we can do coplanar. We can grow our selection once and then push this back. And that is select coplanar. Extrude manifold lets you extrude inward towards your mesh without creating overlapping faces or geometry errors. If you wanted, for example, to extrude these faces inwards, with the regular extrude, you would push inward and then you'd have this manual cleanup to do, which can get pretty cumbersome and tedious. Here's a better method. With the faces selected that I want to extrude inward, I'll do Alt-E to bring up my extrude options and I'll do extrude manifold. Now you see that I'm able to push in without getting those overlapping faces, and this is going to really speed up my 3D modeling workflow. Do some quick edge flow work, and that is extrude manifold. The round cube is a powerful alternative to the UV sphere for creating smooth spherical shapes with better topology. All these edges here point to this pole. If you're trying to create clean sub-D modeling with good edge flow, this pole can be an issue. This is where the round cube primitive comes into play. This is an extension that it's not enabled by default, so we'll go to Edit, Preferences. We'll go to Get Extensions, and if you're using an older version of Blender, it'd be under Add-ons. You'll search for Extra. We'll install the extra mesh objects. We'll do Shift-A, Mesh, and now you'll see this round cube primitive available. The way the topology is laid out, it's a lot more uniform, allowing us to add details quickly without everything being routed towards a pole. And that is the rounded cube. Vertex group bevels lets you non-destructively assign different bevel widths to parts of the same mesh for maximum control. We're going to jump to the Data Properties tab, and we're going to create two different vertex groups. After creating each group, we'll simply rename it. We're going to select the edges that we want within that vertex group, and we'll hit Assign. And I'll repeat the same exact process for the outside bevels. And now we're ready to move on to the next leg. I'll apply a bevel modifier, rename it, change the limit method to vertex group, and simply select my bevel outside, give it the amount that I want, create a second bevel modifier, name it round bevel. Again, go to limit method, change this to vertex group. We're going to select the round bevel vertex group here. Change this, and now we have a system where we have two different bevel modifiers controlling two different sets of edges, and these can be adjusted accordingly, giving us a lot of control on the bevel widths with a non-destructive workflow. Parent flat is a powerful way to align objects perfectly flat, even if the transforms have been applied, saving you from tedious manual rotations. For example, if we select this wrench and look at the transforms, you see that they've been applied. If we wanted to align this to this pedestal, it'd be pretty time consuming trying to do this with manual rotations. Here's what you could do instead. I'm going to just move this up slightly off the ground. I'll get a plane. I'm going to go to my snap options, make sure that I'm on closest face and have align rotation to target enabled. And if we look at this model, you see that we have flat faces here and flat faces here. Now here's the caveat. If you want this perfectly aligned to the world, you'll need 2 flat planes on 2 different directions on your model. So make sure that snap's enabled. I'll take my plane. I'm just going to snap it here towards the top. You see that it's perfectly aligned to this face. I'll select my wrench, my plane. I'll do Control P, Object, and keep transform. So with this plane selected, we see that now we have rotational values on this plane. And now this is the parent of the wrench. So if we move this, this is going to follow. Select all our rotations, zero this out. And if we jump to the side, you see that this is perfectly flat on this plane. What we can do is simply clear the parent. So we'll select both objects, do Alt P, we'll do clear and keep transform. We could simply take this same plane. I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. So now this is facing this direction. Now I'll find the other flat plane here. So again, I'll just move this, wiggle right here. And you see that we're perfectly flush. We'll select our wrench, our plane, Control P, Object, keep transform. And this time, all I got to do is zero out the X. And if we jump to the very top, now you see that we're perfectly aligned here. We'll clear out the parent. We'll do Alt P, clear parent, and keep transform. We can delete our plane. I'll do Shift S, just have the cursor in the world origin. Shift S one more time, do selection to cursor, and that's the parent flat workflow. Converting polygonal edges to curves lets you instantly turn edges into complex curves that wrap around objects way faster than building them from scratch. If we wanted to wrap a curve object around this arm, it'd be pretty difficult to start with a curve primitive and try to mold it into place. So what I'm going to do is dive into edit mode, get my sub D modifier, disable it for the time being. I'm going to select the polygonal edge that will eventually become our curve. I'll do Shift D to duplicate it. So now we essentially duplicated those polygonal edges. I'll right click to drop it into place. I'll do P to separate it, and we'll do by selection. Now this is a separate mesh that I could select. I'll go to Object, set Origin, Origin to Geometry. It's going to place our origin right in the middle. It's going to help with the next step. I'm going to dive into edit mode, select all my components, do Alt S. That is the shrink fatten tool that I can push along the normals to create an offset. I'll go back to object mode. I'll go to Object, Convert, Curve. Now this is a curve object. So if we look at the data properties, we can verify that. We'll go to Geometry. We'll pull out some depth, give it a sub D modifier, right click, shade smooth, and that is converting polygonal edges to curves. Lattices are a game-changing modifier that allows you to quickly change the overall proportions of a finished model. But if we want to take this lion head emblem and make large overall changes to the proportions without affecting the clean panel lines or the supporting loops, it'd be kind of hard to do it. And this is where lattices come in to the rescue. I'm going to do Shift A. I'll get a lattice object, and I'm going to reposition the lattice over the lion head itself. So I'm just going to scale in the front, scale it in the side, and we roughly want to match the overall volume. I'm going to take both the lattice object and my line head, hit / to isolate this. We want to link the object to the lattice via a lattice modifier. I'll go to add modifier, type in lattice, go to object, pick the lattice, and if you've done this properly, there shouldn't be a shift. You could use these very limited points to deform our object. I'm going to jump to the front, select my lattice object, hit tab to dive into edit mode, and I can basically select these control points and start deforming our object. We could always add more divisions if we need it. I'm going to go to this data properties, and you see that we have this resolution. I'm going to go to perspective here, and I'm going to give this some divisions. Lattices work best when you try to keep the resolution of the lattice the lowest amount possible for the deformation that you need. A mistake is to overcrank these resolutions, and then you start getting kind of muddy or lumpy results in your deformation. I'm going to jump to the front here. Let's just say that we wanted to taper the head of the line. So we could actually select the top verts here. and even combine it with something like proportional editing. So I'm going to turn this on, and now we're able to control the lattice points with the additional fall off of proportional editing. So I'm going to scale this down a little bit. I'll go to my scale tool, axis constraint in the X, and I'm just pushing in. I'm going to grab the bottom vertex here, scale out a little bit. And let's just say now that we want them to look a little bit more pissed off. So we can go back. I'm adding more resolution to the lattice so we can get more control points around the brow area. I'll dive back in edit mode, select those points. I'll turn proportional editing off by hitting O, bring this down. The beauty about this is that it's driven via a modifier. So at any point, we could disable the modifier, or if we're happy with the changes, we can go ahead and apply it, delete the lattice object. We'll hit / to bring back our emblem. And now we could take a look at our adjusted model using the lattice. Dynamic cylinders are a game-changing workflow that allows you to adjust the divisions on a cylindrical object after it's been created and even Boolean together. This cylindrical object here, it's 2 basic cylinders, Boolean. If we were to go into cleaning this up to do a clean sub-D modeling workflow, you see that that inner cylinder is a lot more dense. Now that both cylinders have been created, we lost the ability to adjust the divisions. However, if I do Control Spacebar, I'm going to hide my static collection and bring up my dynamic group here. So let's fix the problem we just had. I'm going to go to the outer cylinder here, and maybe we want to give it a little bit more love. So I'll go 40 divisions, and I'll go to that inner cylinder and adjust it to about 24. As it's actually a screw modifier driving the divisions and not a static cylindrical object. And this gives us a lot more flexibility, especially if you like doing blockouts and then further refining the density to then introduce clean, proper topology. So let's deconstruct this. We're going to take a look at the outer cylinder here, and you see that it's mainly being driven by 2 modifiers. One is the screw and one is the Boolean. So the Boolean is basically taking one of those objects and Booleaning this whole. So I'm going to hide this. So if I disable the screw modifier, and I'm just going to collapse all these here, we see that we essentially have a profile. So applying the screw modifier to this profile gave us this shape, which then we can drive the divisions with this steps viewport slider right here. I'm going to set this back to 40. I'm going to jump to the front view, disable the screw modifier. And one thing to keep in mind is that your object is going to revolve around your origin. So for example, even though you have this profile here, if you move this origin, it's actually going to revolve from pretty much where your origin is set and not from where those extremes are. Enable the Boolean modifier. So this is our result. We're able to control both of these cylindrical caps by simply adjusting the screw modifier. Shout out to PZ3 on YouTube. This is where I first learned of this workflow, and he's definitely a great resource for hard surface modeling. And that wraps up the video. And while you're leveling up as a 3D artist, never forget to be a good human too. Everybody's fighting battles you can't see, so always lead with kindness. And now that you got those 20 Blender secrets under your belt, let's add the details that really sell your model. In the next video, I'll walk you through step by step how to build hard surface patterns that add instant visual appeal to your models. You can check that out using the link right here.